Hi students, for digital tools I want to go ahead and go over just some basic tools of Illustrator, and let's start off with by just looking at the two critical uh, axes, I guess if you will, of a basic Illustrator file or application. And like most applications, there is a menu bar at the top and typically a toolbar on the left, and this is no different. I'm going to zoom in just quickly on the toolbar so you can kind of see. Uh, as you can see, we've got File, Edit, Object, Type, Select, Effect, View, etc. Very common nomenclature for graphic design type applications. In the toolbar, there's also some common ones. Many of these tools you will not be able to use. By the way, this program is so robust, I can't imagine doing one project where you use every tool or device. So just be aware, it's so powerful. Even with two or three tools, we can do a lot of things. First thing that you're going to do, uh, this is a vector-based program, so it's really about paths. That's P-A-T-H-S. We're drawing paths, and drawing is a little bit different than picking up a pencil and moving it across a piece of paper. It's more like click and click and click with your mouse and your cursor. But sometimes if you want to create a curve, what we call a Bezier curve, we'll click and drag, and you'll see that happen in just a moment. First thing we want to do is let's open up a file. So let's go to File. And as you can see, you've got some options here. We're not going to use a template. We haven't made a recent file, so let's just go to New. And you will get this kind of welcome board, which basically asks, what do you want to title this for a moment? I guess you could go ahead and title this your first project, but let's just do test for now. And the profile, the type of mode that we're going to be working in is going to be certainly print. We're not designing for the web at this moment or any other film, video device, flash, just basically print. By the way, the difference between RGB and print typically is CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. That is because we do what's called a color separation when something is to be printed. If it's for a screen, for like video or for a computer screen, typically we'll set up in RGB, red, green, blue. I know I'm only going to be viewing this on the screen. I would print something out that you provide for me, but let's just go ahead and presuppose that we're going to use print. So keep it at print. The other thing is the size. You'll see the width says here in points. We're going to use the size as letter, and you know letter is 8.5 by 11. It could be vertical or horizontal, and legal is 8.5 by 14. Tabloid is 11 by 17. Just a perfect size for people building portfolios. And then of course you have some of these European options. A4 is a very standard size like in England or abroad, other places. But let's leave it at letter. And a bleed, a little bit about a bleed, it really has to do, if you want to print something all the way to the edge of a piece of paper, well, keep in mind printers don't really print all the way to the edge of a piece of paper. They typically print on a larger sheet of paper, and then we would trim it. And that's why we call it a bleed. It's that overlap where your design or your color, background, whatever, a picture may actually appear that it's going off the edge of a piece of paper, a book cover or whatever, but it's actually trimmed off. So also while we're here, look at where it says units points. Let's go ahead and change it to inches so we're not confused. And you'll see your letter size, 8.5 by 11, etc., etc. Okay, everything should be set up right there. If yours looks different, for example, I'm using CS6. I think I said in the instructions that I would use Adobe CS6. You may have 5, you may have the Creative Cloud. There might be some subtle differences. What I would say is just be resourceful, look around. There's plenty of tutorials online. You probably have a manual. You've got some. You can certainly ask me questions if you need some specific answers. I'll be glad to help. At this point, let's say OK, and we will have our workspace open up. I'm going to zoom back out, so this might get small for you, but basically you see the working space. It looks like a sheet of paper, letter size, which it is. One other thing, under the workspace, I want yours to look like mine as close as possible. I have character, paragraph, open type. Really, I have layers, and then I have things that deal with text in my area right over here. Yours might look different. For example, if you go to Window, by the way, feel free to pause at any point to rewind, whatever you need to do. I'm going to try to go quickly. Go to Window, and if you'll see Workspace, there's several different kinds of workspaces. If you're doing page layout, you'll get color swatches. You still have the character, which is paragraph type. You know, we can select fonts. There's a lot of tools. Let's go ahead and use this one instead of just the essentials. Let's use layout, because really what we're doing is we're creating a logo in your project. So let's go ahead with layout. If you'll notice up here at the title bar on my page, notice how it says my view is 113% and I am in CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black. If I ever want to convert the modality to RGB, grayscale or something, I can do that at any point in time. There's also a property bar or ribbon up here at the top that every time I make, like if I select a different tool, these things oftentimes will change. Like when I select type over here on the property bar, I see character. If I've got my selection tool, it has some other options. It just varies according to whatever tool. This is your vertical toolbar right here. Your menu bar at the top, the large drop-down menus, as you might well imagine. There's plenty of other attributes within here to deal with, but don't ignore this space right here, because sometimes you can do a quick select. If I draw a line, I want it to be 1 point thick, or I want it to be 9 points thick, I can change it right here. If I want that line to be like a different kind of stroke, I can change it here. If you want the nib of that to be round or look like a paint stroke, a paintbrush, on it goes, and opacity, etc. So let's look quickly, and as we do these tools, let me configure here a little bit so I can zoom in on this just a little bit better for you. I may have to move some elements around just for a second so when I zoom in, you can still see what's going on. By the way, I'm just moving around. I'm shrinking my window down just a little bit. That way when I zoom in, things are not all just lost, but maybe you can see those things on the screen. Okay, I'm going to get everything here a little tight. Then I'm going to zoom back in. Okay. All right, I'm going to, this first tool, if you hover over any of these tools, it does have a little tag that drops down and it tells you what it is. It's a selection tool. What is a selection tool? If you have something like you inserted a picture, or maybe you drew a circle, a box, wrote a word, whatever, if you want to activate that and do something to it, you have to select it. Okay? We haven't done anything yet, so there's no selection. But let me go ahead and just if you want to go along with me, you can. Let's draw a rectangle. Down here, about 6 or 7 tools below, there's a rectangle tool. Now you'll notice the crosshairs. I'm just moving my mouse, but I haven't clicked yet. But once I click, I want to drag, and I can make this any shape that I want. It's a rectangle tool. And as you see, and I click off of it, I've got a rectangle with these nodes. Here's the path, and when you come up to these little squares, these are the anchor points or nodes. And those nodes have a power to them because you can grab them, you can stretch them, you can do whatever you want to alter that particular shape. Let me say that I want a circle. Then let me go to the same tool. It's the rectangle tool here, but I think an option is the ellipse. As you can see, these others, rounded rectangle, polygon, star, etc., etc. But let's keep it simple here. I'm going to do another tool, and it's a circle. By the way, if I want to draw a perfect square or a perfect circle, here's the trick. I'm click and then I drag, but I hold shift down. I'm hitting shift, I'm releasing shift. Notice how that helps me, makes it perfect. And notice this little green guide on the right hand side that pops up. That's showing me my alignment. That's a nice thing about CS6. It gives you this prompt for alignment. So I've got 2 shapes here. And you'll notice they're a white outline, a black outline with a 1 point stroke, and it has no fill. It's either a white fill or no fill. If I want to look down here at my toolbar, I'm coming down the bottom of the toolbar a second. You'll see the color swatches right down here at the bottom, okay? And right here at the bottom, this is the stroke, and over here is the fill. I can alternate these, toggle back and forth. These are very critical tools for you to use in the toolbar, because this is your fill, this is your stroke. If you want to change the stroke color, I've got this object selected. Can you see this up here? I've got those objects selected, so therefore if I double click on stroke, I get, if I can get up here to remove it, I get my color picker. By the way, about this color picker, you can just use this ribbon, this spectrum rainbow of colors, and make a selection of a color. Up here is the top, shows you the color you selected. It gets you the recipe. Here's the hexadecimal if you're like using design for the web. Here's the CMYK mixture or the recipe if you want to mix colors simply by mixing those four. That's perfect. You can even get the Pantone color. We won't get into that at this point, but that's actually a brand name for a matching system, Pantone matching system. But let's select a color like bright red, and I say OK. Now notice when I click off of this, my circle, my ellipse, is a red outline instead of black. Got it? All right, if I want that stroke to be thicker, what do? I go up here to my stroke, and I can make it thicker. If I want this to have a fill, I got to select it. Remember, I need to select it with the primary selection tool, and then I come on down. Let's see if I can come on down here to fill. By the way, the fill is just a toggle here. I've got to click on that background. Right now the background's white. I'm going to double click. I'm going to select a color. And this isn't going to be beautiful, but I selected yellow. Let's go back up here, and sure enough, it filled yellow. So you get the idea of stroke and fill. Stroke and fill, play with that. Let's look at these other tools real quickly. And this is the secondary or the direct selection tool. For example, if I click on an object with this tool, you'll still see the anchor points, but they're actually separate from each other. See what I can do? I can drag those things and actually take those anchor points and do curious distortions with that. By the way, if I want to undo, I just hit Command Z. I believe it's Control Z if you're on a Windows machine, and I can go back multiple times, and I just undid those things, those little stretches that I did. You should play with that for a moment. The Magic Wand tool, this is only important if we've got photography. We're not really using photography on this project, so don't worry about that, but it's a selection tool as well. Then we have a lasso tool. Lasso tool is probably something we won't use, don't know. But it's a little bit more free-handed where you want to select a section of something. And anyway, that won't really be helpful for us at this point in time. The pen tool. Now this is a tool. If you want to draw irregular or organic shapes or even geometric shapes, the pen tool is interesting because you click, 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 and then you try to close the form, and then you have this arbitrary form. Now obviously if you're trying to design something smooth, you want to do something different. Let me undo these. Remember, Control Z or Command Z. I'm undone those last 8 or 9 steps. Okay? Let's try something different. When we click this time, we're going to go click, drag, and then click again. Notice how I got a beautiful curve? Click, drag, and then release. Click, drag, and release. Click, drag, and release. Click, you get it. Okay? And before long, you can get a more organic form because these are what we call Bezier curves. And these curves have these ballasts, these control handles that you can go with your selection, your direct selection tool. You can control these little things. It's kind of cool, isn't it? You can click on any of these and then you can go back and control the handles here to change the slope. Anyway, that's going to come in handy with your logo project, I almost bet you. All right, let me delete that object. And delete, by the way, you hit delete or backspace like you would on a keyboard, but make sure it's selected. If you have this direct tool selected, it might just delete. For example, I click on one thing with the direct tool, one nodule, and I hit delete. It just removes part of that object, okay? If I use my selection tool, my primary tool, I click on it and I hit delete, it deletes the entire object. While that's deleted, let's look at text, this next tool. I'm going to insert text. You can either just click and begin typing away, or you can do something else, which is you can actually draw a space, like if you want a text box, and then you can do something like that. Okay, I'm going back to my selection tool so I can do something with it, okay? What I want to do is I want to make this text larger. Well, you'll notice up here in the property bar, the font by default is Myriad Pro, and it's 12-point regular. You've got some options, you know, it could be condensed, It could be bold, condensed, italics, etc. So let's just leave it regular. If I want to make it larger, I could select a point size. Oops, it doesn't fit into my text box, so I need to enlarge my text box so it'll fit there. Okay. Another way to handle scaling of text, by the way, is not just changing the point size, but I could actually select my handle, my corner nodule or node, and I could actually hold down Shift and drag it out. Let's see if I can do this again. It's not scaling for me. Okay, I must have this in the wrong fashion. It may be the way I drew it because I drew a text box. If I just simply click my text and say this is text for scaling, then I could actually just click on it, and I think I can scale it. Surely I can. Yeah, there we go. By the way, if you don't hold down Shift, you get one of the crimes against humanity, which is the uncalled for distortion of text. This is an exaggerated reason we do not want to distort text. Look at this. This text is for scaling. Look at the horizontal strokes. See how wide they are? The vertical strokes are very skinny. This shouldn't happen, and this is what happens. Even if you think you're just doing it minutely, notice these beautiful round ellipses are now like football shapes. We don't want that. Let's go back, and when we scale something, we should always just grab the corner node, hold Shift, scale. And as you see, it's getting larger, but it's getting larger proportionately. Okay, keep that in mind. Now quickly, let's get back to some tools. We've got by the way, every one of these pen tools, almost every one of these tools has a drop down. See the little arrow on the bottom right? This means if you hold down the cursor, it gives you some other options. You can play with these. Even your text tool has something called type on a path. For example, if I draw a path, let me draw a path with a pen tool. Let's try that. I'm going to draw a click, curve, click, curve. Oops, got a fill going on. If I don't want that fill, let me come back down to my toolbar here and where it says stroke, and let's turn this around. I just want an outline and no fill, so I toggled back. That little double-headed arrow means to toggle. Okay, now I've got a stroke there, a path. If I want to fit text to the path, I can go text, go to the type on a path tool. I can insert it just anywhere on that path, and there you go. Path, it just follows along. My path isn't large enough for my type, so I can either make my type smaller, or I could actually make my path a little bigger maybe. I'm scaling, as you can see. I think what I'd want to do is make my type a little bit smaller or redraw my path. Let's go back here. Let me make this a little bit smaller, see how it's fitting on there. And it's snaking around there. All right, you get the point. A line tool is just that. It's just if you want to draw a line. By the way, the nice thing is just a stop and a start, okay? And then you got your stroke widths up above. That line doesn't have a color, apparently. So I would have to make sure that I come down here and click on my stroke. Remember, fill, stroke, and select a color. So I'm double clicking on it, and I'm just going to select a color. I'm really zoomed in, which may actually kind of complicate things a little bit, but I just want to make sure you can see this. Oh, say okay here. All right, now I've got a line that's a color. I can, by the way, if you mouse just outside of one of these nodules, you'll see that you get a curved double-headed arrow. This is like the rotate tool. We can rotate this any direction we want. By the way, if you want something to rotate 90 degrees, hold down Shift, or you can keep holding down Shift. It'll go 45 on and away. It'll do increments of 45 degrees at a time. That comes in really handy if you're trying to do something angular. By the way, I drew my line at an angle anyway, so that looks a little awkward. There's an eraser, pencil tool, paintbrush. Paintbrush is nice. I mean, it feels just like a paintbrush, but if you want the stroke to be different, you can click on this. We can go up to your brushes, and let's say we want this kind of a paintbrush that feels kind of like a paintbrush. We want the size to be thicker. You know, you can see some really cool effect that's happening there. I encourage you, a lot of these tools, the eyedropper tool down here, if you want to select a color and say I like this yellow, I want to use it on something else, I can eyedrop it. I just click it, and if you'll notice back down in my color swatches, it shows me my background, my fill is yellow. If I click on this, what do you think is going to happen? This is text for scaling. Notice it's black text. I'm going to click on this. It shows me that that element, that text is no outline, stroke, a black fill. Let's look at this line that I drew. What do you think it's going to do? That's an outline. It's a stroke that's this burgundy color, and it's no fill. Guys, I'm going to leave it here. There's a zoom tool. There's some other cool features. By the way, if you hold down spacebar, I'm clicking down spacebar. You see this little grabber hand? I can grab and move my page around just at will. That's kind of nice. You can see my cluttered desktop when I zoom out, but let me get my page back into kind of full view mode for just a second. And you can see that I can scale this page around. That's a really quick tool to use for it. I work fast on it because I've used it a lot. I'll be honest with you, I'm not as familiar with Illustrator as I am other programs, but it comes with you fast and understanding. Let me leave it at that. There's a gradient tool. There's many other tools, but hopefully you'll explore some of these a bit later on in some of the tutorials. And again, don't hesitate to call or email if you've got any specific questions. Please don't call and just say, I don't know how to do any of this. But say, I don't know how to draw an ellipse, or I don't know how to make the rounded corners or a gradient fill. I can be very helpful in those kinds of questions, but I can't just answer, how do you use Illustrator? Okay, you've got to practice and explore. All right, good luck, and I'll talk to you soon.